So I hope all of you are doing well. My name is Shreya Bansal and I'm currently working as a software engineer at Microsoft, and I'm also an educator at Level. So in this video, what we are going to do is, after having talked about SQL constraints in the last video, we will talk about aggregate functions. Okay, so before that, we need to take a quick introduction about SQL functions in order to move on to aggregate functions. So let's start our conversation about that. So SQL also provides many built-in functions to perform a lot of operations on the data. Okay. Now these functions are useful while performing mathematical calculations, string concatenations, substrings, etc. Okay. So SQL functions are divided into two categories. Okay. So let's say you have some data already available, right? You do not want to manipulate that data. You do not want to do any changes on that data, but you want to, draw some conclusions, right? You want to do some mathematical calculations on top of it, right? You want to see some results, right? You want to average out a few things. You want to do the summation of a particular column, right? Use cases are like, I can say, endless. Let's say in a students table, you are storing the marks for all the students, and now in a column, all the marks of the students are there, and now you just basically want to know the average marks of a class, correct? So in all that situation, you're not going to just take the values from the data and do that manually. SQL provides a lot of functions inbuilt which are available that you can use for these very purpose. Okay, and those functions, when we talk about SQL functions, okay, they are divided into two parts. One is aggregate functions, and next is scalar functions. Okay, so we have aggregate functions available as well as we have scalar functions available as well. So in this video, firstly, we will talk about aggregate functions. Okay, what all aggregate functions are available for us and what do aggregate functions provide. So let's start our discussion. So aggregate functions basically returns a single value after performing calculations on a group of values. Okay, so there are like a group of values that will be there. It could be 10 values, 20 values, 30 values, and there are some computations, right, that are done, some calculations that are done on top of those all the values, and the result is always a single value. Okay, so it's more or less like this, that here you will pass, or you will take a group of values, and in the result you will always have a single value. Okay, some of the popularly used aggregate functions are average function, count, first, last, max, min, and sum. Okay, so now we're not going to just go through the names of all of them. We'll actually see a quick demo of all the aggregate functions available. Okay, so I'll write down aggregate functions over here so that we can go over all of them one by one. So the first one is average. Okay, we'll go step by step. So the average basically what does is, it basically returns the average value, right, after calculating it from a numeric column. That means in the column you should have numeric values. Okay, for example, let's take the very example that we have already available. Here we have our teachers table, okay, where we have an ID, name, age, and salary. And here we can also see the data in it. So let's take a look at that before doing anything. Select start from teacher. So you have all the data available. Let's say I want to find out the average age of an employee in as a teacher. So I will do select again. I will do average. I will write the column name, which is age, right? And then the usual teachers table. Okay, so it's pretty much just choosing that column itself that you want to display, right, as a result, and just adding an average bracket to it. And you can see that the average age of an employee in as a teacher's table, as a part of teacher's table, is 39.5. Let's say I also want to see for all the teachers that we have, what is the average salary of a teacher? That is 20,000, and which is correct also. If there are two employees with 10,000 salaries and two employees with 30,000 salary, the average salary indeed will be 20,000, right? So again, very useful and very easy to use as well, right? Because you do want to make sure these calculations are handy for you, and there is a good way to perform these calculations as well. Okay, so this is average. Next we have is count. Okay, so what does count basically returns is, it basically returns the number of rows, right, present in a table, right, which are like satisfying a particular condition. Okay, so now you don't want to see what all rows satisfy that condition. Whenever you put a where clause, you basically get all the rows which satisfy this particular condition, right? But here you actually want to get the count of all the rows instead of actually seeing the data. Okay, let's say here I do average instead of average. Now I'll put count, and from the teachers table where the salary is greater than 20,000. So here I just need the count of those employees which have a salary greater than 20,000, which is 2, and that is correct as well. Here let's say I need a count of all the employees who have an age greater than 40. Okay, again, I do not want to see the data. If I do this, I will get only those rows where the age employee is greater than 40. But if I do this, right, that means I will only get the count of the age of all those employees who have an age greater than 40. Okay, so that is how you basically use the count function. Okay, here there is one more thing that you can add on top of it, right? Here let's say I used this example, and inside count now you can also add distinct. Okay, in that case the answer is 1. Let me show you how it is working. So first, let's say I want to display all the rows in which the salary is greater than 20,000, right? So there are two employees, but how many distinct salaries are there, right? There is only one salary above greater than 20,000, right? What is the distinct number of salaries possible that is greater than 10,000? So for that, what you can do is you can do count, you can do distinct, and then you can do salary, and that will give you the answer 1, because greater than 20,000 there are two people who have a salary greater than 20,000, but here the value amount is same, the distinctness is only 1. So that is why we get the answer over here. Okay, let's move on to the next one now. The third one that we have is first. Okay, so that means in a like a table you have like a lot of columns, and for a particular column you want to see the first value in that column, so you use the first function. So it basically returns the first value in a column. Okay, so remember over here that a SQL or MySQL rather, since we are using MySQL databases over here, does not support first. Okay, although first is like a standard, I would say, function or like an aggregate function which is available, right? But there is no availability for it in MySQL. Matlab, it doesn't support that. There are other functions known as limit that can be used, but MySQL doesn't support first. Similar to that, we also have last. Okay, so what does last basically do for us is, if we want to see, let's say, the last value in a particular row. Okay, so using the last function we can do that. So what is the syntax over here for both? It is similar to the previous one. So we have select, we have first, let's say age from the teachers table. Okay. Similar to that, let's say if we want the last as well. So here it basically fetches the last value in a column from a table. Okay. Now here the syntax is again the same. So we have select, we have last, we have, let's say, age from teacher, and it will tell you the value in the very last row. Okay. Now this is done. Next, what we have is first is done, last is done. Next, what we have is max. So actually all these aggregate functions are very verbose in itself. Okay. If you want to really know what they all do, you can actually use and understand from the name itself. Let's say I want a maximum value from a column. Okay. For this, we do have the support and it works fine. For example, let me show you here. In this, let's say I do select max age from the teachers table. From the teachers table, and you can see out of all these the maximum age is indeed 51, which is presented in the output over here. Okay. So let's say if I now do for salary also, sorry, max, and if I do for salary, I have. So see it is as a very important use case, right? Let's say you have a lot of students in your class and now you want to see which student basically scored the maximum marks. One option that you have is that you go to each and every row, you basically see the mark section, right? And you see what marks each and every student has and then accumulate the result. Or what you can do is using MySQL, which is very efficient for doing these kinds of calculations, you can directly know the maximum marks, or let's say the maximum salary any teacher takes. Okay. So it's very, very useful over here. Similar to this, we also have minimum. Okay. You can see over here, the next function is minimum, wherein what happens is, let's say here, this basically will give you the minimum value from a column in a table. Okay. So if I want to know the minimum value from a column in a table, right, I can use this. Now, instead of this, let's say I want to know which teacher has the minimum age. Okay. Very simple syntax. Just do this. And the teacher with the minimum age is 30 and the teacher with the minimum age is 51. Let's say here also, instead of knowing which teacher takes the maximum salary, I want to know which teacher takes the minimum salary. And that salary amount is 10,000. Okay. So again, basically we are able to do the last. What we have is the sum. Okay. So what sum basically does it basically adds all the values of a column and provides the summation value. Okay. Always remember that so far whatever aggregation functions that we have been looking at, right, all of them basically just give you a final single value in the output, which is what we started our conversation with as well, right? That aggregation function works on a group of values, but in the output they only give a single value. Now, what one use case that can come is, let's say I want to basically find out how much expenses does a school incurs when they have to basically give salaries to the teacher. So they want to know what is the total salary amount. And the moment they do this, they have their final answer over here. In this case, this is 80,000. Why? Because 30 plus 30 plus 10 plus 10, right? So this is 80,000 over here, right? Let's say if they want to basically add up the age of all the teachers, right, it comes out to be 158. So again, for trying to add and summation as well, we do have capabilities available. Okay, and you have to be very focused and clear about using these as well, because they're very important. So never forget that something like this also exists. Aggregation functions are very popularly used with select queries, and they provide a wide variety of use cases as well. Okay, so this actually completes our discussion for aggregation functions. We basically started this video with the very fact that we have a few SQL functions available, right, which basically helps us to perform some meaningful calculations, right, some string concatenation, substrings. A lot of functions are available which actually help us to draw meaningful conclusions about the data that is available to us. And out of which, the first one that we discussed is aggregation functions, which is basically working on a set of values, performing some calculations, and in the output giving us a single value in the output. Okay. So what all aggregation functions do we have? First is average, when you have a group of values and you want to find the average value. Then is count, wherein you want to count what is the frequency for a particular condition that is satisfied in the where clause. Then is the first and the last, wherein you want to know the value in the first row of a table, or you want to find out the last, like the value in a row for a particular column. Then we have max and min. So if you have a column and if you want to find out the maximum of all the values or the minimum of all the values, you have the capability for that. And in the end, you can just summation, you have summation also available, in which you can just summate the values over for all the values in a column. Okay, so this is pretty much what we have in aggregation functions. I hope this is clear to everyone and you get a fair sense of idea about how this is going to work, right? This is a very important use case, so it does require some good knowledge and understanding about how this basically is going to work out. Okay, so I hope this is clear to all of you. Now the next step for this is going to be that you have to practice this on your own, right? Try out a few examples, suggest a few use cases, right? And then see, are you able to do it or not? Maybe take an example of a student table, add a lot of columns, and then try to perform the calculations and see all of them are working or not. Okay, so that would be it for this particular, I would say, video for aggregate functions. In the next video, we'll talk about the scalar functions. All right, I hope this is clear to everyone, and I will meet you in the next video. Thank you.